Every single pitch changes the scenario of the baseball game. We trust analytics more than we do our own eyes.
Really, the reaction doesn't really matter what you and I think. It's what the fans think.
A lot of things obviously aren't said on the radio that a lot of people would like to say. And we got enough artificial intelligence in baseball right now, and a lot of them went to Ivy League schools. No, the days of Cal Ripken are gone. The days of playing 162 games are gone, and I think that is a good thing. I don't want my guys playing every day. I want them well rested. Shoot, even a farmer gives his soil a year off.
The political correctness is driving me crazy.
The great managers are the ones that don't win games. They just don't lose games as often. But that's not the last time I'm going to correct you. That won't be the last time you're wrong about something. I'm going to let you know about that. I'm going to take you places that you wish you always went. How's that? And welcome to a view from center field. Welcome to a view from center field. Once again, your host, Andy Van Slyke here, along with my partner, Rob Raines. And Rob is my go-to guy when it comes to the knowledge about Major League Baseball. He has over 30 years experience covering the game. And we have a really special guest and a personal friend of mine, Rick Horton. Rick Horton is a color analyst for Fox Midwest. He covers the St. Louis Cardinals. He is also not just in the secular world, he's also in the religious world. He is the executive director of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in St. Louis, Missouri. So, Rick, welcome. You really are a special guest for me personally, and I know you also have a personal relationship with Rob, and you and Rob go back many, many years when you played here in St. Louis. So it's going to be really fun to talk to you and have Rob along with us.
You guys are both great friends of mine, and to say that we have a personal relationship almost isn't even enough, Andy. I mean, we were roommates, and I don't know that a lot of people know this, but I've got one son, and his name is Andrew, and because we named him after you, so I think to say that we're good friends is an understatement, and of course I love talking baseball with both of you guys, and Rob and I, we go so far back as well, and Rob has always done a terrific job of following the game of baseball, and it's kind of fun to be with you guys.
You sound like a bunch of home guys out there.
Right.
We are home guys. We're all three of us are home guys.
Hey, Rick, were you on the mound the day that Andy made the 3 errors at third base in Louisville?
4
errors. And I was trying
to get this right. If we're gonna rip me, Rob, let's get it right.
Let's get this story right out there because this is a story I tell all the time, and I love telling it because it's about Andy. So the point is, Andy, they were trying to make him a third baseman, and so Jim Fregosi put him at third. The Cardinals thought maybe that was his next position in the big leagues. They forgot the fact that he was a potential Gold Glove center fielder, which he became. But he tried third base, and I was starting. It was in Louisville. It was right after Andy and Lori got married, and
it was the next
day. And Andy kind of drove through the night to get to the ballpark and was tired. That's his excuse. But he made all these errors at third. And Jim Fregosi, who I absolutely loved, I mean, the late Jim Fregosi was a dear friend and managed both Andy and I, Rob, and he came out to the mound to take me out in the 6th inning of a game where I'd given up 5 unearned runs, all because of Andy. And he came out and he kind of got right in my face and he said, "You know why I'm taking you out of this game?" And all the infielders were moving towards the mound. And he pointed towards Andy as he was coming to the mound. He said, "Because you can't keep the ball away from him." And I just thought that was a great moment, a great teaching moment, and a kind of a lighthearted moment.
And you guys became friends anyway. And
we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah, and the thing is, for people who don't know, Rick was a left-handed pitcher who relied on a lot of off-speed stuff. So the opposing manager, of course, filled his lineup with 9 right-handed hitters, and they're all hitting the ground balls down to me. I think when I made four errors in 6 innings, but you got to remember, Rick, I also made for putouts too. So I was 50, I was 500 at the time.
Well, 500 is good if you're batting, Andy, but fielding is not quite so good. One of the errors I remember that you made is there was a ground ball that was hit hard. I will admit to that, and it stuck in the webbing of your glove, and you kind of looked at it and just kind of stared at it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, take the ball out of the webbing and throw the guy out, Andy. But you just kind of thought that was kind of fun, and so it's part of the great reality that people don't get of how much you make friends with people and have moments in the minor leagues that kind of stay with you forever. And that's, of course, our travels together in the minor leagues, Andy, are things that I'll just really never forget.
Yeah, and then people always ask me, how did I perceive myself playing third base? And I said I played it like Brooks.
Yeah.
Mel Brooks.
Right. Well, you also know that's my line. I actually wrote that line for you. You may not remember it, but I actually said that to you on an airplane once. And every once in a while,
but I take credit.
Well, you can take it. That's okay. I don't really care. I mean, it's like
I have to wear it.
You have to wear it. I mean, there's a joke writer, and then there's a deliverer, and you were the deliverer.
Right.
I mean,
the best thing about that game, guys, is probably it was before minor league games were on video or television, so there's no video evidence of this game ever.
No, but I remember it vividly, Rob. Trust me.
I wasn't there, but I've heard the stories often enough. I just got how many errors.
Hey, Rick, let me ask you this. A few years ago, now that you've had a chance to experience it when you cover the St. Louis Cardinals in Major League Baseball. In the beginning, you were vehemently opposed to instant replay, video replay. And, you and I were teammates back in 1985 when the Don Deckerson call was a very famous call that probably cost us the World Series. Having said that, how do you think the game has been impacted by video replay, either positively or negatively, and have you changed your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say slightly changed my mind because I think it's been okay is the best way I would say it, Andy. I mean, I wouldn't say am I a fan of it? No, but I see how it's kind of helped get some more calls right, but you never get all calls right because you don't get balls and strikes right, and what I think the casual fan may not understand is the 1-1 pitch that's called a strike that's really a ball, or the other way around, may influence that inning more than anything else because it gives the hitter the count or the pitcher the count, so it changes the game. So to say that you want to just get everything right, it's a game of imperfection to me, and I like that about baseball.
It's a game of highly imperfection. Actually,
umpires make errors. Players make errors. I think it's taken some of it for some fans, and I would say, go ahead, count me in that group. For some fans, it's taken out some of the extra things you talk about, like, oh my goodness, that play and the argument and the managers and there's just something about the game and how you manage frustration and imperfection, which I think is what makes baseball great. If you try to be too robotic about it, then you end up with, actually some of the problems we have in baseball today.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I don't know how Rob feels about some of the new rules in baseball. But I think they've actually taken a lot of the excitement out of the game. You can't break up a double play. You can't, you can't hit the catcher anymore. Pretty soon, I mean, what is going to be the next step? I mean, the fact that they're even talking about taking a runner and put him at second base. Yeah. Why are we so in a hurry to change a game that didn't need to be changed is beyond me.
Well, my feeling, guys, is that baseball has an inferiority complex that it should not have. And you talk to some of the TV people, and that's obviously my world with, doing Cardinal baseball on TV, and also I do some radio as well. But they're always concerned about the fan who needs to get younger, and they want something faster. And basically they say we need to be more like the NBA and the NFL. And I say, no, we don't. Let's be baseball, because baseball is a great game, and baseball is a game where you don't have to watch every pitch. If they say, well, the game's too long, well, who watches all 3 hours anyway? Nobody does. It's a very kind of pastoral game, which we should embrace. And if you try to make baseball as exciting as the NFL, it ain't going to happen. Not going to happen. So just
There's nothing more exciting than watching those umpires setting their headphones on, waiting for somebody in New York to make a decision on what they saw minutes ago.
Rob, we tried to create some drama with that on the TV side, and we'll have three umpires stand. It's like, yep, they're standing there.
Yep, a little Jeopardy music going on.
They're still standing there. I mean, we actually got some negative feedback at one point because we were making fun of the lack of drama of the moment, and yet that is what it is. I mean, it's just not that compelling.
I mean, I'll say this. I agree with Rick. I know the intention is to get the calls right, but it just seems sometimes if you can't make a decision in 30 seconds or 45 seconds, then keep the call the same and move on. I mean, it just seems like sometimes they wait forever when it's not overwhelming evidence that needs to be overturned. Then get on with it.
Yeah,
and it gets back to the issue, which another thing I disagree with is this: they're highly sensitive to the speed of the game today, and I think oversensitive. Yeah. And I think the number one issue, which has not been addressed, because they say the game is slowing down, is because the bullpen situation is totally different, Rick, than when you were pitching in the bullpen for the St. Louis Cardinals. You were expected as a minor league pitcher that when you got to the big leagues, you were supposed to get both right-handers and left-handers 100%. Out. And that is not the case anymore.
Well, we had 10 guys doing the job of 13, and I'm not saying we were better than them. I do believe guys are, they're bigger, stronger, faster. I don't begrudge the modern day player and think that. I think there's some excitement about a guy who can throw 100 miles an hour, and I clearly couldn't do that. But you had to figure out a way to get through the lineup the whole time, and maybe a second time, even out of the bullpen. I mean, if the starter faltered, you may have to go 4 innings. So there's a the specialist thing has become so overblown at this point, and the reality is when you think about 162 games, you can't just be all or nothing every day. If you're all or nothing on Monday, then your guys are not ready for Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. That's the beauty of baseball to me, is the fact that it's a long season with a lot of twists and turns, and you need guys that can kind of just suck it up and throw 3 or 4 innings out of the bullpen. And and that's why we have 13 guys in the pen. That's why we have so many pitching changes at the moment. And I kind of get the philosophy when guys are throwing 99 miles an hour, but you burn them out.
Well, Rick, wait a minute. First of all, the guns changed since when you pitched too.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, the modern gun is the ball is measured out of the hand, not at home plate. And when you and I were playing, when the old Jugs gun, it was measured at home plate. So you lose
4 or 5
anywhere but 4 to 5 miles an hour by the time the ball's hit. So the fact that all these guys are throwing 98, well, I'm sorry. It's physiologically impossible for all of a sudden, one generation later, you have everybody throwing like they are today.
Yes.
No, it's not the case.
So the 95 guys of my era, our era, would have been guys like Nolan Ryan, Todd Worrell.
The 99 guys of today.
They're throwing 99, exactly. And so, so that still doesn't get me up into the mid 90s based on where I was.
No,
but pitching it.
But that's not the point. The point is you learned how to pitch, and the difference is I think some of the art of pitching is creeping out of the game, and now these guys are just throwers.
So you just said the word that I think. I mean, my mission, and Joe Torre's been pretty adamant in spring training about, he doesn't want to lose the essence of the game of baseball. I'm not sure that's the word he used, but he wants baseball to still be baseball. And that includes, moving runners over, not every outcome being home run or strikeout. He wants baseball to be baseball. And so the word you said, Andy, was art. And I think baseball is an art. It's not just a video game function. It's an art. And so, we still see it. I mean, there's no question you see artistry in how a guy plays shortstop and a guy plays the outfield and how a guy can pitch. And I'm not saying they're not in touch with that, but we're more in touch with just the pure force of it, home run, strikeout. And we're in danger of kind of losing some of that art.
Yeah. Well, again, the speed of the game is an issue. Let me ask you this: as a former major league pitcher, the amount of trips to the mound has now been cut. Of all the rules that they've instituted the last few years, I think this is the best rule that they've come up with. I watched games last year, and I know you're probably sensitive to this. You would see sometimes catchers go out to the mound with one batter, 3 or 4 times with one batter.
Yeah. Or even, Andy, every time there's a pinch hitter in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, my thought as I'm doing the games on Cardinal baseball, my thought is, weren't you guys paying attention during the meetings before the game? I mean, this guy's going to come up. It's not a secret. The guy's coming to the bench. So you should have already talked about how you're going to pitch to him. So I frankly think 6 is too many. I think 6 visits I think it ought to be 4, because I think 6 is still going to – I'm not sure it's going to impact as much as we want it to. I like the rule. I agree with you. But I think 6 is too many. Make it 4, because – it's not just the visits from the catcher; it's the visits from the infielders, and so what's happening this year? What I think they're trying to do is put the burden back on the pitcher to do his homework, be ready, talk to the bullpen coach before you come in, know what your plan is, and execute it. Period. And you don't need the cliff notes from the catcher or the third baseman when you get into the game. You should already know.
Yeah. Well, let me ask. Let me ask Rob and you what your philosophy is on maybe limiting the roster to, let's say, you can only have 5 or 6, whatever, bullpen guys, and then adding maybe that guy that has pitched 3 or 4 days. He can go on a whatever you want to call a 2-day rest, DL, whatever the case may be. That way you can rotate guys in and out of the bullpen, but you can't use them like they do in hockey,
right?
Where they have a guy on the roster, but he's not eligible to play.
For the night. Yeah,
right.
I think that's probably something that they'll adapt in the next CBA, or at least talk about in the next CBA. But I don't think you're going to limit the number of pitchers. I think it's just going to be a case of we have 28 guys eligible to play, and we're going to pick 25 to play tonight. So the guy that was your starting pitcher last night, the guy who's going to be your starting pitcher tomorrow night, they'll automatically not be eligible to play in that game. And I can see the union, kind of going for that, and because it gives 3 more guys major league jobs, major league service time.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying you have to limit it. I mean, you got your starter, whatever the case, you have to set that roster that particular night.
Right. If you had a bullpen guy that's pitched 2 or 3 days in a row, he would probably be one of the guys on that list.
Right.
So the team that's kind of, and I think there's a lot of merit to the discussion. I would say that the Dodgers, a former team of mine, actually used that last year in a different way, and it was the 10-day disable list, and they used an extra 3 pitchers or so that they would just disable with a hangnail. So that's kind of I think how they, and I think they used it expertly. I mean, good for them. I mean, I don't know.
They did do it. They did do it. And they did a great job doing it.
It was pretty obvious that they were doing that, and they had a 16-man staff that they were just rotating in and out based on who was ready and who was fresher. And so that freshness led to a pretty darn good season for the Dodgers. So, I mean, it may happen that way. I mean, I think, there's something to be said, though, on the other side for just the ability to have some longevity and not just to be good for a spurt, but to be good over, baseball is a marathon game. It's not a sprint game. And we got to be careful not to be thinking about it always in terms of the sprint, like who's the best today and how do we do it today? It's how do we win this week, or how do we win this month with what we have? And I think that.
Well, don't you think the danger of analytics is that's part of it? That you got guys sitting up in the front office and say, well, today this particular statistic matches up that this guy should be in the lineup based on statistical analysis, and that's the guy that should be in the lineup today. And the manager may be totally opposed to it, but we all know that managers are getting less authority on deciding not only who's on the roster, but who may be playing that particular night.
I met with an analytics guy for about 2 hours with the St. Louis Cardinals, and we talked about all the stats. And I asked him, do any of your analytics contemplate more than just, let's say, win probability and run expectancy, or 2 that I asked him about? Do those contemplate anything beyond just that game? And his answer was no. So the point was, you can say that Michael Wacha, this is a Cardinal Nation kind of thing, that everybody talks about Michael Wacha should never go past 5 innings as a starter because the third time through the lineup, he's going to falter. Well, my answer is he needs to get better the third time through the lineup, not let's keep taking him out, because you could say that, yes, we'd be better off using the closer in that game and using all the best guys. Well, that's great. You use them all. But what about the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day? None of the analytics really do a very good job of contemplating a longer
They can't
haul.
predict the future, right?
No, they're just talking about that one specific day. Well, that one specific day is one game out of 162.
Yeah. It's a real danger. Hey, Rob and Rick, you both were down in spring training for the St. Louis Cardinals, and I think of all the off-season moves that the Cardinals had made, I think this guy they got from the Marlins, Marcell Ozuna, is going to probably have as big as impact as any Cardinal trade, maybe in the last 20 years. I think this guy is going to be terrific. You both saw him. What do you both think of him?
Ricky, you go first, and then I'll chime in.
Rob, go ahead, Rob.
I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a cleanup hitter in the middle of the lineup, which they haven't had. Probably the biggest impact bat in this middle of this lineup since Albert Pujols left, in terms of hitting for average, hitting for power, being able to drive in guys. We already saw a few games. Once they kind of got the top of the lineup settled in spring training, when Carpenter came back, when they were going to go Fowler, Fan, Carpenter, Ozuna, you saw them generate a lot of offense early on. The other day he hits a 3-yard homer in the first inning. So I think that he's going to be just the right guy in the middle of that lineup. I also feel like he seems to be a great guy in the clubhouse. He's already friends with Yadier Molina and Carlos Martinez before he got here, and seems to have kind of worked himself into the inner sanctum of that clubhouse pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think last year the big missing piece for the Cardinals was they had a lot of good players but no great players, and Ozuna can be a great player. And Oral Hershiser, when we played in L.A. Last year, Oral Hershiser said, I look at your lineup and there's not one guy I wouldn't pitch to. There's nobody I'd pitch around. I mean, they're all good, but there's nobody to pitch around, and you need a force. And I think Ozuna was meant to be that force. I think that's what was missing last year, and I think the chances are pretty good that will make Matt Carpenter better. It'll make Paul DeYoung better, make Jed Jerko better, make Yadier Molina better, just because they don't have to be the guy. I mean, especially Matt Carpenter. Last year, Matt Carpenter was told, we don't want you to leading off anymore. You need to be the force in the middle of the lineup. And that's not who he is. He's an on-base percentage guy. He likes to walk. He likes to hit line drives. He tried to be a home run guy, and it didn't work. So it was to his detriment, but also to the Cardinals' detriment, that they didn't have a guy like Ozuna to be that middle of the lineup force. So I think I agree it was a good move, and he is very likable. A lot of folks have told me that, and I've seen that already. There are good teammates and there are great teammates. And I had one report from someone that said that he's a great teammate, and always good to have those.
Yeah. Now think about this stat. Since World War II, there's only been 4 guys that have eclipsed 35 home runs for the St. Louis Cardinals. That's pretty. That's what's going to happen this year if he has any kind of year like he's had in the past. Well, you got Pujols, you got Scott Rowland, Joe Torre, and Stan Musial, Albert Pujols. I mean, that's pretty good company.
Agreed. I think he's got a shot at that, and I think everybody, and some scouts that I talked to too, they believe he's on the upswing. Some guys, you always have to judge their career. Are they leveled off? Are they trailing down, or are they going up? In the sense with Ozuna, is
I want to ask Ricky, the other guy I think is the big addition to this club, and people were talking about it. I wrote about it on STL Sports Page a couple of days ago, an in-depth profile, and that's the new pitching coach, Mike Maddox. I just think he's going to make everybody on that pitching staff better. I like his philosophy. I like the way he goes about his job. I think that's an addition that the Cardinals made over the winter that's going to be really, really a major factor in their success this season.
So I spent a year. I was a coach with the Cleveland Indians for a year, and I loved doing that. And it was a great challenge, and I enjoyed it. And so I kind of get a little bit about the importance of the coach and the player relationship. But one of the things is at some point, and I learned this pretty quickly, sometimes you just need a new voice. And I think for the Cardinals, that nothing against Derek Lilliquist, but I think sometimes you just need a new voice with a Carlos Martinez or an Adam Wainwright or a Luke Weaver or the other Cardinal guys who are incumbent players. So I think to some degree, it's just good to have a change, period. But I think what Mike Maddox is he's kind of a lighthearted guy from what I've seen. A lot of kind of when you see him doing PFP in spring training, they're having fun. They're doing games. They're just enjoying being a baseball player. That's part of his, I guess, his psychological kind of uh, approach to the game, and I think that's refreshing because the Cardinals have been
Boy, that's fundamental. That's fundamental. I mean, you're playing Major League Baseball, and my gosh, if it becomes too much of a business and not a game,
do something else.
Really. And I think the perception, and rightly or wrongly, that some of that fun has been lacking since Mike Matheny's been the manager. The perception, and I talked to a lot of fans, is it's too business-like. It's too. It's a total reflection of how the fans see him when he talks to the media and when he interacts. And maybe this is the best thing that's happened to Mike Matheny, not just the pitching staff.
I can't disagree with that. Of course, you've got Willie McGee and Jose Oquendo also, and Brian Eversgerd, who's a very lighthearted guy who's going to be, and not just lighthearted guy, but he's a professional guy. He's been a minor league coach for a long time. He's going to be the new bullpen. He is the new bullpen coach, but former Cardinal pitcher. But I mean, there's a new kind of, I don't know what to say, just less seriousness, I would say. Very light spring training so far. I mean, everybody seems to just be enjoying the Cardinal Spring Training of 2018, and you hope that pays dividends. And I don't begrudge Mike for thinking that you have to be professional and serious about what you do, but there's a balance, and I think he's who he is, which to his credit, he went to the playoffs, first 5 years as a Cardinal manager, which nobody had done before in the history of the game. So you give him credit for that, but at some point, the balance, I think, matters, and I think these new guys are there for that purpose.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bullpen in 2018 for the Cardinals. You got a lot of names out there. You got a bunch of names. And Rob and I were talking before when we were trying to figure out your technical difficulties.
Yes.
It's up in the air. There doesn't seem to be. I mean, you got Norris. You got a couple good veterans in Norris and Gregerson. And it's Rob's opinion that it could be a total rotational system, a lot like in 1985.
It could be. I said on the Cardinal radio side broadcast a couple days ago, I said that it was a cloudy situation coming to spring training about who would be the Cardinal closer. And now that we're 6 games left in spring training, I believe that the situation actually has gotten cloudier. And I say that because the names that we were hearing about were Tyler Lyons, Luke Gregerson, and Bud Norris, and maybe Dominic Leone from Toronto.
The
new pitcher that the Cardinals have. And so I thought, okay, so there's a kind of a 4-horse race, but a couple of guys have kind of just made leaps and bound progress, and one of them would be Sam Tuivailala, who was with Cardinals a season ago. He's been virtually unhittable, but beyond him, to me, if I wanted to close a game tomorrow and I needed to win the game, what Cardinal would I bring in the 9th inning? I almost can't believe I'm saying this, but the answer would be Mike Myers. Mike Myers has been lights out, nasty in spring training. Chris Carpenter's gotten a hold of him, and he has gone from a 4-pitch starter to a 2-pitch reliever. And the 2 pitches are a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and a slider that nobody can foul off. And he's become –
nobody can foul off.
No, they can't. Well, maybe you can, Andy.
No,
I know Rob.
If you say nobody, I definitely fit in that category.
And he hasn't walked anybody either. That's the other thing. He's had pinpoint control.
He's got a new demeanor as a reliever. He's a very kind of soft-spoken guy, kind of a quiet guy and all that. But as a reliever, he's kind of found his place. And I'm not saying he's a Aroldis Chapman, but I honestly say of all the guys I've seen this spring training, and I put him over Norris and over Gregerson in terms of his stuff for sure. But I mean, if I had to win a game and tomorrow was it, and tomorrow's not it, but I mean, I'd like to start with him and see what happens.
the shortstop, DeJean, he's an interesting guy. He has a very high strikeout to walk ratio. He hits all these home runs last year. They give him a big long-term contract. What do we expect to see, you think, from him? Is he going to be what he was last year, or is he going to be a guy that is going to – the learning curve is going to make him better? Is he going to strike out less? I mean, what is your prediction for him? Because he's a really interesting player.
Yeah, only, Cody Bellinger's season last year kept him from being the Rookie of the Year. I mean, he was that good last year, and he came out of nowhere. But he's not out of nowhere anymore. He's a known commodity, and guys have had a chance to adjust to him, and he's adjusted to big league pitching already. Like say early August last year, he had about a week where he struck out a lot and was lost, and then but he doesn't lose his confidence. He's got the ability, being around Paul, very smart guy. He is able to be both confident and not arrogant at the same time, which I think is an important quality for a major league player. You want to be able to act like you belong there, but if you get a little too arrogant, the humbler comes up and gets you. And he's got that perfect, to me, the perfect place of, I belong here, I can do this. And what I like about Paul too, it's amazing to watch him hit, because he's not a big, strong guy, but he hits the ball a long way. He's got incredible ability to keep his hands inside the ball and have an extended swing and power swing that creates lift and drive and distance in a way that, it's really fun to watch. I'm a big fan of his. I expect him. I'm not saying he's going to have exactly the year he had a year ago, but he's not going to have
about the other guy that I think was right there with DeYoung as the Cardinals' best offensive player last year, and that's Tommy Pham. He gets his contract renewed this spring. Was not happy about it. Didn't like the offer the Cardinals made to him, and then he's gone out and had a horrible spring. And I just don't know what to make of that. I mean, he didn't play well last spring either, so I don't know if he's just one of those guys that gets off to a slow start. If it's all the day games, if that's an issue with his eyesight is concerned, I don't know. But to me, he might be the biggest question mark in this lineup going forward as the season gets underway.
I don't think there's any question that he's the biggest question mark, and I think the Cardinals not signing him to a longer-term deal is maybe part of that. I mean, I like Tommy. Tommy's Tommy works hard. He's a hard worker. He shows up. He plays hard. But he's got the swings, and the swings unfortunately come from a lot of physical issues that he's had to deal with, including eyesight throughout his career. There are times where he's playing with one eye. And so the contact lens adjustment that he goes through every year is an issue. He battles through it, and he's give him credit for kind of persevering, but it makes it kind of a question mark. To have him produce the way he did a season ago, I think that's a harder thing to ask for. And you certainly hope for it if you're a Cardinal fan, but it's, we'll just have to wait and see on this.
So tell me about Colton Wong. Is this his breakout year?
Yeah, I think it is. It's time for him. Time for him to be the guy and stop being the kid that's, everybody talks about him being a flashy defender and makes the great play, but can't make the regular play. He just needs to make the regular play and just get over that and stop. Colton has a flair to him and a flash to him that I think is really exciting and interesting, but he just needs to get it done. Tony La Russa, used to say something, or he said it for 20 years. He said, you either do or you don't. And that was one of his sayings. And so you could look at a guy and say, well, yeah, I think maybe he will and maybe he won't. And I really like this guy and I like his tools. And his response would be either you do or you don't. And his other statement was, you are what your record says you are. So, I think it's time for Colton to just get past the flair and the promise and the hope. Yeah. And I will say last year, hit 285, on base percentage was better. And he made some strides. It's just, I think there's a level where
there's
maybe
still a lot of growth, is what you're saying. Big league growth. It's big league growth. It's just not talent. It's just big. It's just playing like a big leaguer on an everyday basis. That's where it really comes down. Looking like a big leaguer, playing like a big leaguer, and going about your business like a big leaguer. Make the play. you don't have. I mean, I'd rather have a non-flashy guy make all the plays than have some of the things we've seen since he's been up here. So the consistency.
One of the
is
things
what
I
we're
think
looking
is going to be interesting about this club is how they
Yes.
get Jose Martinez 400 to 450 at bats.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
just put him in the lineup. I mean, play him. You got to play him somewhere, and he's not a great first baseman. He's not a great outfielder, but the man can swing the bat. I mean, he you know, you guys have heard me talk about this, but I played with his dad with the White Sox, and he's a carbon copy of his dad, Carlos Martinez. And I mean, in terms of his personality and likability and all that, and Jose's just a terrific teammate. And but beyond that, when he hits the ball, I mean, it's hit. And he, he's got a good understanding of the strike zone. And typically during the season, you'll find enough of a rotation where Carpenter can move around different infield positions to give him some time at first base. And I think that's what we're going to see.
Dexter Fowler, he's not playing center, right? That's out.
He's playing right field.
He is not a center fielder. Now, he's an interesting guy because he's had his best those last 2 seasons. He's had his best OPS seasons the last 2 years as a Cardinal.
Yes, yeah.
But at the same time, did the Cardinals, did they get it right? Is this the kind of guy that maybe needs to figure out a way to play and show up and do the things that the Cardinals like to see get done?
Yeah, well, he's a really intriguing player because he does a lot of things well. He runs the bases well. He's not a stolen base guy, necessarily. He's not a fast outfielder defensively, so he doesn't cover a lot of ground. So I think he's a left fielder. He's not a right fielder ultimately. But the Cardinals have him in right field now because they have Ozuna, who's a Gold Glove left fielder.
Don't take it.
I'm not sure if Ozuna can play right or not, but I think that's an intriguing thought to me that maybe they're in the wrong spot. But what Dexter does, he's a switch hitter who has kind of developed as some players do. Andy, you've seen it. You and Rob both have seen guys that as they've gotten older, they become more of a force player. You think about McCutchen with the Pirates. Now he's not with the Pirates, but for years with the Pirates, he was a kind of a speedster, good hitter when he was young, and then he became a power guy that didn't run much. So, I mean, I think Fowler's kind of in that.
He's making a transition as you get older. Sometimes that's what you have to do.
He does, and I think a lot of doubles, triples, home runs from Fowler a season ago, and I think the ball jumps off his bat. I mean, that's his best attribute at the moment. It's not his arm, it's not his defense, it's not even his speed, but the fact that the ball jumps off his bat, and he does have the ability to walk in that leadoff spot, which I personally think him as a leadoff guy is better than Carpenter, and there's a lot of people in St. Louis that want Carpenter to be back in the leadoff spot. But Fowler's going to run the bases.
Carpenter is not a leadoff man. Period. He is not.
Right. No.
He's just not. That's just not his deal. So good second hitter, but not a leadoff hitter. So all right, Rick, I really appreciate it. Before I let you go though, and we'll get you back maybe at the end of the year. The St. Louis Cardinals are better this year. I don't think the Cubs are better. Milwaukee's better. So those are the 3 teams in their division. These are the 3 teams that are going to be competing. Where do you think the Cardinals are going to finish? Are they beating the Cubs? Are they wild card? If everything goes according to plan, they do have enough talent to overcome these other 2 teams.
Well, I think you have enough talent if everything goes right. I mean, and the everything goes right includes Alex Reyes coming back and being a force when he's ready. Maybe May. Because Alex Reyes, from what I saw from Alex Reyes as a starting pitcher, and if Luke Weaver does what he does and continues to his upswing, I think the Cardinals have enough. That's true of every team. You can say if, but I think there's, the prognosticators say that the Cardinals are supposed to win 87 games this year, which would be right on the edge of playoff baseball. And who knows what the Cubs will do, and who knows what Milwaukee would do. But I think the Cardinals will compete with Milwaukee. I think their pitching's better than Milwaukee's. Lineup probably better for Milwaukee at the moment. But again, you got to do it. You are what your record says you are, and you just still got to go out and either do or you don't. As I said earlier, and I think there's 4 or 5 really key things for the Cardinals. Reyes would be one. Matt Carpenter kind of regaining his all-star form would be another. If those 2 things happen, I think the Cardinals are
They
right in the hunt.
and I also think they need a couple of their starters to go 200 innings. That they got to have a couple of those guys. Someone's got to step up.
Well, missing Lance
Yes.
Lynn is a problem. You got to replace him somehow, and I think the thought of doing that. I mean, I will say Jack Flaherty, one of their stud young guys, who was a AAA, the best pitcher in AAA, essentially, showed very well in spring training, and he's close. I mean, he's still young, but he's close, and it's possible that second half of the season, he's a force too. So there's a lot of
but is he
out
young,
there.
What is experience? Is he young mentally, or is he? I mean, there's a difference between being young and inexperienced. I mean, you can be young and feel like you're ready. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You can be physically young.
Yeah, I don't. Well, he wasn't ready when he brought him up last year. You could tell he was pitching a little timid, but this spring he was not timid, and I think he has showed that if the call comes, he'll be ready to help if something falters. I also always, one other name I should mention is Michael Wacha. To me, has always been a bellwether guy with the Cardinals. If Michael Wacha has a great upside, but he can also be, kind of average. So, but if he hits his upside, he could be he's like a number 2 starter. And if he acts like a number 2 starter, and if he does that, I mean, he's been a 17. He's been an all-star for goodness sake. So is Carlos Martinez. So, 2 years straight. So you got some all-star capacity with the Cardinals starting staff, and if they live up to that capacity, they'll compete with Milwaukee.
Rob, since I'm going to say, Rob, since you covered them also some this spring,
who?
Your thoughts?
I would say the one guy I have a question about that I was going to ask Ricky what he thought is Carlos Martinez. I mean, we talked about all the other starting pitchers, all the other upsides. I didn't see Carlos Martinez pitch well this spring, and I just wonder about his success rate going to be this season. I mean, if he's supposed to be going to be the number 1 guy, he's going to be matched up with other teams' number 1 starters. I don't know how that's going to go.
Well, you don't know how it's going to go, and Carlos has some volatility himself. I mean, he's got such tremendous talent. He can get swing and misses and ground balls like no other pitcher in the National League, really. I mean, very few, let's put it that way. He can get the combination of being a ground ball pitcher and a strikeout pitcher, both, and he's both because his ball moves like crazy. But he's going to have to harness that, and he's going to have to harness the emotions, and he's got off-field stuff that he's dealing with that he's going to have to kind of find a way to be on top of. And definitely a challenge.
To me, that's
awful lot of
biggest
upside.
Challenge. Can he make Carlos Martinez an ace?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Rick, Jim Leland used to say you always have a couple of guys that want to play alley ball when they're on the mound, and that's what he reminds me. Martinez reminds me of a guy that he can be cruising along for 7 innings, and all of a sudden, he walks the 8th place hitter, he walks, a 130 pinch hitter. He doesn't complete a double play and the ball's hit back to him. There always seems, not always, but he'll lose games when he's involved and he's in control. It's amazing.
What's interesting about Carlos is I would say he has a chance of being a superb defensive player that makes a lot of errors. So what you're saying, and so you'd have to chalk that up to some mental, whatever you want to say, mental awareness or calmness. Preparation, whatever.
I really do. It seems like when the game is on the line late in the game and he's involved defensively, he seems to speed up he goes faster than the play needs to be.
Yeah. Sure. Like he's rushing, and like John Wooden used to say, you need to be quick but don't hurry, and he hurries, and so Carlos is almost like a reliever in that sense. I mean, he's such a good athlete. I mean, he really is a tremendous athlete. He's blessed with a terrific arm, and I love being around Carlos, and I mean, one of the most interesting things about Carlos is what hair color is he going to have from one day to. But I don't mind. I mean, none of that bothers me in the slightest. I just want to see him focus enough, and maybe focus is a good word for him. Focus on kind of just staying where he needs to
Rick,
stay.
I want to ask you one other question
before we let you go.
You had an interesting wager at the end of last season with one of your broadcast partners on the television, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know there was a tattoo involved. And I don't remember, did you win or did you lose? And did you get the tattoo?
Yeah. No, so it didn't happen, and I think it had to do with whether the Cardinals were going to go to the playoffs, maybe. And there's an old story of I think a pirate that
Jim Rooker,
Jim Rooker,
yes.
maybe
Walking.
Somebody agreed that he's going to walk a long way.
Here's the story. We had a 10-0 lead in the first inning against Philadelphia, and he says, if we lose this game, I'll walk all the way back to Pittsburgh. We lost 11-10.
Yeah. So he did, and he did like a long walk or something for charity. Is what I understand. So quick Jim Rooker story. I came in a game in Pittsburgh. I picked a guy off of first base at the end of the inning. You were probably playing with Pittsburgh, and I came into the old Three Rivers Stadium. Came into the clubhouse, and Jim Rooker was doing the game on radio, and he said. And they came back from break, and I was still in the clubhouse. And he said, "Boy, that Ricky Horton for the Cardinals, he's got a great pickoff move to first base, and as many hits as he gives up, he better have a good move." So that's what I remember. So the bet, Rob, that Danny Mack and I had was, I think if the Cardinals would have come back in a particular game, or maybe came back to the playoffs, I was going to get a tattoo, and. What I got my partner Dan McLaughlin to agree to do is that he would not talk for 3 days, which would be much more painful for him than it would have been for me.
Oh, that's tremendous.
So it didn't happen, but I'm holding back that bet for maybe something that might happen this year, because I'd like to see if I can get Danny to not talk for 3 days.
That would be a blessing for everybody, actually.
Andy, what's your thought on that?
I can tell him I said it. So
yeah, I will.
I think they're going to at least be a wild card. I'm not sold on their starting pitching. I've always been a firm believer that I have to have at least potentially 4 guys in my starting rotation to give me 200 innings, and I don't know if I see that. Martinez is probably the guy that can do it if he can figure out how to win games late, but it just isn't there right now. And who knows if they're healthy and they get it. Here's the thing. When you look at teams that do make the playoffs, it's because of their starting rotation. They just figure out a way to eat those innings up. And right now, name me one guy that can give you 200 innings and go from there. So I think they'll be there. There's no question about it. I think they are a totally different team. I think that the fact that they got a new coaching staff is a good thing. Osuna is going to be a major offensive weapon for them. And like Rick said, he's going to make the guys in front of him and behind him a better hitter, because I know from experience when I hit behind Jack Clark or Barry Bonds or in front of those guys, I was a much better hitter.
It'll be fun to watch.
So
totally agree.
I think he'll have the biggest impact on this ball club this year. You'll see a totally different offense than you've seen. So. All right, Rick. Well, I appreciate it. That's Rick Horton, my buddy, my friend, and he is the color analyst and expert for Fox Midwest. Rick, I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love being with you guys. You're the best.